Hmm. And maybe this is a good entry point to discussing people who are starting to wake up and question. Maybe not, maybe they haven't gotten to Trump yet, but they've read White Fragility and they've heard about how racist they are and how they'll always be racist. I know I got probably about a month and a half ago a very emotional email from someone who was forced to read White Fragility, and really she got depressed from it, and she said I'm racist, I'm always going to be racist, and there's nothing I can do, and it was very depressing. And then she happened to find a video on my channel where I was basically calling BS on White Fragility, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, no one has said this to me. No one has said that I can be white and not be a racist." So when you're interacting with people that are starting to wake up and question the woke ideology, how do they start to wake up, Howard? What are kind of the triggers that you're seeing?
Well, when they start to wake up, they don't tell other people.
Mm.
They keep it to themselves. Um, we understand cognitive dissonance, which basically means you have a value set, a base of understanding, a belief set. And so that's all well and good, except you go out in the world and you start to see evidence that what you believe isn't supported by reality. Well, when you see that, you just don't go, oh, I had it wrong. People don't change on a dime. I just wrote an article called Change Your Mind, and it's posted on medium.com. And I write short articles because I know people don't have a lot of time. But I talk about how hard it is to change your mind. And one of the points I make is we don't want to change our minds. We're set. It's inconvenient to change your mind. It's like, you know, if you think about it, the America operates on the Old English system, not the metric system. We haven't changed that because we don't want to, and there might be some practical reasons for it. But I'm just trying to point out there's so much resistance to not changing your mind. So that's thing one. Thing two is if you start to be uncomfortable that what you're thinking and believing just simply doesn't fit. Now you've got the challenge of what am I going to do? Even if you say, I'd like to change my mind, but if I do, worst case, I lose my friends, I lose my job, I don't know which way up is anymore. It's a personal crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people will do one of two things. They'll either go further into their shell, or they'll hurt so much they'll come out and they'll knock on the door, they'll read a book, they'll talk to somebody they think is wise, they'll see a therapist. I mean, who knows? They'll just try to seek something outside of themselves. If they see something outside of themselves, let's say they see this broadcast and they go, I've never heard all these things put this way before. I didn't know that you can hate Trump but still think, okay, some things he did okay. And I'd rather have another president than Trump, but I certainly don't want Biden. People can make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
They can start to make decisions along continuum. They don't have to be black or white about everything.
Mm-hmm.
They could say, Trump is a racist, but I'm not. And I like his policies. And at least he doesn't make racist policies. And whatever he thinks in his own head is his business.
Mm-hmm.
See, that's all nuance.
Yeah.
And people have a hard time with nuance. They have that. I mean, that's what happens in these. Okay, I'm going to change the subject.
Okay.
Okay. The history of animation. You didn't see that coming, did you?
No, I did not. Go for it.
The history of animation is remarkable. We've been human beings have been interested in animation since they were drawing pictures. Okay. And fast forward, we have animations. We know them mostly as cartoons. Cartoons are caricatures. Cartoons aren't real life. Their cartoons are, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote, and Wile E. Coyote falling off a cliff and getting killed, 15 times in one cartoon episode. Well, that's not life. You don't get killed 15 times. But it's a caricature. What's it a caricature? It's a caricature of, a predatory animal that's pretty good at being a predator, unless they're outsmarted by, the roadrunner.
Mm-hmm.
And it wants to show that over and over and over again to make the point that being smart wins over being a predator. Who knew that there was, a message in all the cartoons, but there's always a message, but it's a caricature message. Well, here's another shift. That's what politics has done. We don't talk in nuances, we talk in caricatures. So when Joe Biden or anybody, it's not just him, and it's not just Republicans, and it's not just Democrats, it's all of them. Although I think the libs are doing it more these days than the other side, but they all do it. And Trump does it too. And what they do is, Trump will say Sleepy Joe Biden, and he's doing a caricature. And he's trying to make a point that is a bottom line point. But Joe Biden, even with whatever cognitive problems he's having,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think his whole life he's been a stupid person.
No.
I may not have agreed with him,
Mm-hmm.
but when I get into a campaign, I may want to caricature him as the stupidest person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Biden will do the same thing with Trump. He's the stupidest person on the planet. So what you have caricatures being the dialogue of all our politics. You and I know each other. We have respect for each other. And we probably believe, without knowing, unless we got into it, that there's plenty of things we disagree with.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But here's what I think we know about each other. We would say, hey, let's look at this issue and let's see if we could solve that problem. What do you think, Carlin? And you would tell me what you thought.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't be deranged and block it out. I'd want to listen to it. And then you'd say, what do you think? And I'd say something like, well, I like 3 of your points. I haven't thought about that before. Good thing I asked you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a concern about 2 things you brought up. You wouldn't block me. You would say, oh, yeah, what are the 3 things? What are the 2 things? And it would go back and forth that way. So that derangement, just to underscore what I was saying before, means there's no blockage. There's nothing about you that I know would ever block a discussion between you and me, even if you were polar opposite from what I originally thought.
Mm-hmm. And what you just described there, it's like the lost art of the compromise, right? I the last time I was at South by Southwest in Austin, and I know we have some people from Austin in the chat, or have kids in Austin in the chat. I think it was, oh gosh, I want to say it was 2018 or 2017, something like that. And I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger there. And, I really only went to Arnold's talk because my husband loves him. And so I wanted to take a picture of Arnold and text him and be like, haha, I got to see Arnie. But he's very, very smart. I was shocked. And one of the things he talked about was how he tried to get a whole bunch of stakeholders that had a stake in healthcare in California in the same room to try to reform healthcare in California. And he said to them going into the room, he said, not a single one of you is going to walk out of this room with a 10. The very best you should hope to walk out of this room with is a 7. Because if you get 70% of what you want, that means you're giving other people wins. Because if you demand 100% of what you want, that means that guy over there is going to get 30% of what he wants. And then the whole thing falls apart because people aren't satisfied. But if we can get to a place where we're satisfied with getting maybe even 50 or 60 or 70% of what we want, that's still a pretty good place to get to.
Absolutely. And we don't have an apparatus that allows it right now. Our media is standing in the way because they'd rather do cartoons, caricatures, than to do nuance and give credence to a lot of points of view. Mm-hmm. And of course, and this brings us to cancel culture. It's the most serious threat we have to our republic right now. And of course, it fits with the derangement thing that I was talking about, because what does cancel culture do? It blocks. It says this is not to be thought of. This is not to be mentioned. You can't say it because, of course, it would be dangerous. Because if you said it and it made sense, but it wasn't according to the narrative of whatever cultural group you want to belong to, we have become more loyal to our cultural groups than we have to freedom.